At the beginning, when we began the design process of Tower Hill, we didn't look at it in the classic 20th century way. We really reached back to much earlier periods, back to the Greco-Roman period, the height of the English 18th century classical style. And because this is where the sort of the genius of gardening, the genius of landscape really evolved and really blossomed. Since the 18th century, things have become much more controlled by mechanical means and by human invention, and less so on just the common sense of dealing with what the earth gives us, its compass points. The farmhouse is the window on Tower Hill. The farmhouse is a 280-year-old structure, which is the control point. It's the center of the compass. The surrounding buildings, which make up the core of the property, are beautifully designed, and they provide shelter for the body. The ornamental gardens, which are sited on the spine of the hill, and in relationship to the buildings, provide food for the soul. When you experience these beautiful landscapes, they're all on this fairly level plane of land. When you go immediately to the east of the ornamental gardens, you come to what we call the economic gardens. And these gardens primarily sit on what is sloped land. Vegetable gardens and orchard and fruit gardens and such things are really best sited on sloped land because the drainage of air is very important. The economic gardens provide food for the body. When you go farther east from the economic gardens, you come to where we call our ecologic gardens. These are the gardens designed around naturally existing conditions, whether those conditions be dry, moist, sunny, shaded, or rocky. These can be very challenging but very interesting features in a garden. And then beyond that is just the wonderful undisturbed wetlands. And that's really the vast majority of the property. The controlled area, whether it be ornamental, economic, or ecologic, those areas, as vast as they are small in comparison to what we consider the more, or the totally natural areas. One of the marvels of Tower Hill is that it's a very controlled landscape, but you don't feel controlled. It's as unique and beautiful in the middle of winter as it is in the height of summer. There are a series of access points. The primary axis is to the north of the farmhouse, which is controlled by the back door. And that controlling axis goes through the center of the orangery and the systematic garden. When you get to the center of the systematic garden, there is a controlling axis which runs from west to east, and that control point leads you down to the wildlife pond and to the wildlife pavilion. The main axis and control line of the Stoddard Center leads you out the north door down the center of Pliny's Alley, which ultimately leads you to the inner park, or our native plant garden. One of the things that people admire about Tower Hill is the fact that it has this 50-year plan. As the plan evolved, this wonderful person, Louise Doyle, just said, "Festina lente," make haste slowly. When you realize the level of detail and the complicated nature of each piece of this plan, that as it evolves, it looks like it's evolving very quickly, but yet it's evolving slowly. The master plan is divided into 8 major phases. Now we're embarking on the 4th phase, which will finish off what we call the quadrangle, the collection of buildings that creates a central court or a sunken garden. This project begins to the west of the Stoddard Education Center. There are some very important infrastructural changes and changes to the grades of the service road that sits directly behind and to the west of the Stoddard Education Center. None of this is particularly glamorous, but it will help in the approach of delivery and the access to the lower level, to the library and lower classroom. The second part of Phase 4 is the renovation of the Great Hall. There'll be important aesthetic improvements to this interior space, which acts as an exhibition hall for flower shows, also for social events and concerts. There will be important improvements to the gift shop, which will have a new orientation point, which will be to the east into what will be a new reception room. Right now, people enter Tower Hill through a relatively small vestibule. This new reception space will be much more generous in size. Directly to the east of the new reception room is the Limonaya. Its collections will be the camellias. We have a wonderful collection of camellias, and also the citrus collection, lemons and oranges. To the east of that is the new dining room and kitchen facility. The present cafe is in the Great Hall, and it will be moved to a dedicated dining room, which will be larger and will have a beautiful view out onto the new Winter Garden. The Winter Garden is the central point of Phase 4. It's a beautiful garden that's being designed to look particularly nice in the winter months. Like it or not, our winters are very long in New England. They're not 3 months long, they're more like 6 months long. So to show people how a landscape can be created that is as beautiful in the wintertime as it is in the summer is important. In the center of it is a large pool that we call Domitian's Pool, and this pool will have 2 bronze turtles in it as fountains, and these fountains will run every day of the year. The turtles are a symbol of our sort of unofficial motto of festina lente, making haste slowly. The pool will be slightly heated, and the fountains will create motion, sort of kinetic interest to the garden. Just to the east of the dining room, downslope a bit, is an events lawn where a tent can be erected for outdoor summer events, whether it be weddings or flower shows or any event that requires protection under a canopy. Plants provide us with all the food we eat and with all the air we breathe. And when you think about that simple statement, you realize just what an enormously important part plants play in our lives.